One of the most important facets of any business is customer service. In business, you are not only selling a product or a service, but an experience. Providing exceptional customer service and developing real relationships with your clients means increased sales, retain customers, new customers via word of mouth, and a positive reputation. You're listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Benjamin Del Grosso gives you the ins and outs of one of the most underlooked aspects in business today. Improve your customer service and watch your business skyrocket. 2, 1. Now, here's your host, Benjamin Del Grosso.
Hello and welcome to the show. Our main goal is to give you ideas of what we can do as individuals or as business owners to create a positive customer experience. Nobody is perfect. Believe me, I know. I make mistakes like every other human on earth. One of my values is continuous improvement. My objective is to learn from customers, friends, family, professionals, and find ways to continuously improve myself. So the question is, do you learn from your challenges and adapt? Or do you keep doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting different results? In the current times, I've noticed a huge push to transactional experiences. Where you're now, just a number. Everything is competed on price and price alone. The personal touch and customer service has been slowly disappearing. Now is the time to separate yourself from the pack and start standing out, doing something special. Today we have Yazmin joining us, and Yazmin, why don't you tell us, who are you, where are you located, what do you do, and why do you do it, and how did you get started?
Hi, so my name is Yazmin. I'm in Nebraska here in the U.S. I currently do, I'm an operations specialist for a local nonprofit, and I do a lot of face-to-face talking with people and a lot on the phone. Part of the way that it's described at my workplace, it's basically I'm like the face of the place. Like I'm the first contact that people see as they're coming in, and I am the primary source contact. So when people call in to our building to ask questions about a program, how it works, I'm like the person that answers the phone and making that first impression.
Have you noticed a huge change in how your job has changed in the last few years? Like how you have to communicate to people, or, I imagine a lot of people have to wear, masks and that kind of, unpleasantries. So you can't really see people smile anymore. You can't read their facial expressions. Is that kind of a challenge with being the face of the company, or?
Yes. So something that I've recently noticed, and even though COVID has been going on for almost 2 years, it's been in the last few months that I've noticed that it has picked up more, is when someone that's not currently in our program, that's just looking for information or to get more feedback or calling back, or even walking in person, is that when they walk in, they're already very escalated. So pre-COVID, people, it's a nonprofit that I work for. So pre-COVID, people would come in and it was a different vibe. They would come in and say, hey, I have this issue. I don't know if you can help me. Here's my situation. Tell me more about your program. Versus recently, in the last few months, people come in or call and they're already agitated and they're already escalated because they've called so many places. They have gone to many different places. And it's the same story of they just keep getting transferred to different places and they just don't get the customer service that they need. And it's not because they've already called us before. It's just that they have gone to the other places, and the other place is either just on the phone, they can't go in person, or they keep getting transferred, or they don't have the right person, or they get different information. So when they come in, it's hard because you start at a really high level. The person's already agitated and you have never talked to this person before and they don't know anything about your program. So it makes it harder to communicate with people. And from my point of view, because, I have other duties to do while I'm talking to them, it's hard because what was a 3-minute conversation before now turns into like a 10-minute conversation, because I have to de-escalate them and be like, okay, so this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we can help you or not help you. But then also it's about going that extra mile and saying, well, I can't help you with that, but there's this other location and here's their number and here's their address. And from what I know, you call and this is what's going to happen. And this is kind of how their system works. So as a person on the other side of customer service, it's like being informed about, like, especially in the nonprofit sector, being informed about all the other programs in my town. And every now and then I call them and pretend that I'm a person looking for their services just to see how their process works, so I can help whoever walks in through our doors save time and just keep that de-escalation down, because I call it the ping pong game. Like, they just keep getting transferred from one place to another. And it's like, if I can't help you, there's this other place I can.
Oh, yeah, I can totally relate. Like, even actually yesterday, this happened to me again. We needed to renew our car insurance because it was up for the year. Mm-hmm. So I called and said, blah, blah, blah. I want to get a hold of the, insurance company locally. Right. So you called the number for that office, and then they're like, oh, yeah, no, you just come down and we'll help you out. But my name is this. You've called the Tawasin branch. And I'm like, I'm in Mission. Tawasin's like an hour and a half from my house. I called the local one that's 10 minutes away. And they're like, oh, okay, I'll transfer you. So they transfer me. Wait on hold 3 minutes. Get on hold. Hi, yeah, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, just come on down. We'll help you out. Okay, and who am I talking to? Yeah. Which branch is this? Ladner. Okay, listen, this is not the right branch. Like, she goes, oh, I'll transfer you. She transfers me again. Next thing you know, now I'm in Coquitlam. I'm like, I'm just trying to get a hold of the Mission branch. Seriously. I was like, how hard is this? And then my wife and I go down there to go see them. There's 7 people working. There's no way they couldn't have answered the phone. Like, there's no way all 7 of them were busy at the same time. And I don't know, I don't know if just like with what happened with this change in our world now, just things are becoming, very disorganized. And I talk a lot about how I got stickers made from a company, and the only way they had any communication is email. They wouldn't do video calls. There was no phone number to call them. There was no nothing. And it's like, so many companies are just opening up, thinking that they can just, utilize email, and that's it. And what's great? I was listening to the Andy Frascella show the other day. Actually, yesterday, I was listening to his podcast. And he said something very interesting, because I turned 41 here in the next couple of days. And basically, he was talking about how being in his age group, because I believe he's 42 is what he always says. He goes, you think about it, he goes, all the guys are like 60 plus, started a business that was like brick and mortar, pounding pavement, working the grind. A lot of the younger generation is learning the whole online. And when we're in that 40-year-old bracket, we've learned how to do online. We've learned how to pound the pavement. So we know both sides of the fence in terms of building a business or all that kind of stuff. So it's just, and I think that's what's happening is a lot of these new businesses are opening, and then they're just thinking, oh, well, just everybody wants to communicate email, right? And they're just but they're not understanding that every demographic and every age group communicates differently. But yeah, I mean, it's I can totally relate, just being ping-ponged around. And I mean, and that's the thing. I was completely calm, but why, they transferred me to the third place and it was wrong. And I was like, you just get, seriously, you just had to transfer me. What's the big deal?
It escalates the situation, because most of the time, when you call, it's something that I've noticed too. I want to call a store that I also, it just happened to me yesterday. I told you on the message, I'm like, I have a story. It's I went to this store, which is a national store, and I bought an item, I come home, I try to activate this device, and I'm told that I can't activate it because the store has a lock on it. And I'm like, what do you mean it has a lock on it? Like, yeah, the store has to unlock this thing like virtually, or the serial code or something. So I go on Google, I look up the phone number for the store because I'm like 45 minutes away from the store. And I call them and I get transferred to a national hotline. And it's like, well, if I wanted to talk to a national hotline, I would have called the 800 number. I want to talk to an employee at the store because it's a very simple issue. I just want to know, can you guys do this over the phone, or do I have to go in person? Because I'd rather not go in person because it's so far away from me. So I get transferred to this thing. I'm on hold for 15 minutes. And the second the person answers and they say hello, and it took me like 2 seconds to reply back, they had already hung up. So I'm on hold for 15 minutes just to get hung up. So then I go on the chat through the app, and I start talking to a person, and the robot kept saying, waiting for connection. So when you finally get a live person, well, first they give you the robot that just says, how can we help you today? And you kind of have to start typing in.
Gotta love those robots.
And it's like, oh, it seems like you need help with this. And then you're like, yes. And then they keep asking you all those questions back and forth. And I just ended up typing, can I talk to a human? And they're like, oh, would you like to talk to a customer service representative? It's like, really? Yes. So I finally get someone on the chat. I explain my situation, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So then I get transferred to the other department. So now I have to wait on the chat for somebody else to answer. And then I have to re-explain the issue. It's like they couldn't even read the log. So then it's like, oh, sorry, that's the wrong department. So I had to I had to wait for another person on the chat. And it's like, I just want to know if I need to go in person or if I need to just buy another thing. Long story short, they wanted me to call the customer service line because they couldn't help me. And I told them I just called, I was on hold for 15 minutes and no one, I was hung up on. So I had to request someone to call me when they should have been like, would you like us to call you when a service representative is available? No, I had to request someone to call me back whenever someone was available. So they finally called me, and the lady literally laughed at my issue. She's like, oh, in all my years in service, I had never heard of a device being unlocked. It's like, there's different issues going on here. First of all, you're telling me you've worked for this company for years and you've never heard about this issue. You don't say that. The other issue is she was laughing because she didn't understand my issue. And it wasn't a laugh of trying to get the mood down, because I understand sometimes you try to make a joke to lower the mood. Yeah. But it was more like a mocking laugh. Do you even know what you're talking about? And it's like, I just talked to the service provider for this device, and they're the ones that told me that. And I have screenshots to show you if I could show them to you. And she's like, well, you're going to have to go to the store and tell them that. And it's like, it's been an hour and a half. And the only thing I wanted to know was if you guys can do this or if I need to go to the store. So it took me an hour and a half to get that question answered. And then she's like, oh, by the way, there's a restocking fee on the item if you decide to return it. That's like, so you're telling me that you guys made a mistake on the item that I purchased, and I have to go in person to the store, return it, and pay a restocking fee that's the same price as the item that I bought. Where's my incentive to drive 45 minutes to return an item just to pay for you to take it back? I can just dump it. So what ended up happening is I dumped that item on the trash because it was worthless now. And I ended up having to pay the manufacturer to send me one straight from the manufacturer.
I have tons of operations experience, and obviously you're an operations specialist, right? So, for me, this is just such a huge issue with your processes and procedures. Mm-hmm. This is how you quickly lose customers, and especially I actually took a marketing course, probably, I don't know, 20 years ago or something now. And they talked about how, 60-year-old plus, which is about their age now, they'll go to the same restaurant over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And if they hate the food, they'll keep going over and over and over again. They'll complain when they go, but like, I hated the steak last time I came here, but whatever, I'll order it again. Maybe it'll be good this time. But then like demographic, like my demographic, right? We're around the 40-year-old range. Like, we go to a place, we give them a chance, right? We might go there again and give them a second chance if it was a terrible experience. Might go like, you know what, maybe it was an off day, maybe it was this, it's got good reviews, let's give them a chance. And we'll go there again, and if it sucks, like, they're dead. Like, they're done. Mm-hmm. Never going back again, right? And it's funny if you think about this. Think of how many times people get a bad coffee and they keep going back over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that's every age group. That's every demographic, right? You could go every day and be like, oh, that Dunkin' Donuts, that coffee was terrible, right? And you could just keep going over and over again, like, oh, whatever, they'll get it right tomorrow, right? It was only $2. But I mean, so let's kind of switch gears here. What was your most memorable experience as a customer? Like something that just made you go wow, and you wish other people would experience that same thing.
Just to have a recent example, I recently started doing deliveries, like grocery deliveries, for one of the big companies that does it, and so I'm pretty new. I'm still like on my second week, but so there's different stores that we can go shop at, and Target is like amazing at their customer service, but not any Target. There's a specific Target. So when and it's to a point where when I get a notification that there's an available order for me to go and deliver, I only take the deliveries for that specific Target. And it's because of their customer service. So it's the whole experience of like, the moment you walk in, the place is clean. Like, it's just organized. Most of the time you walk in and it's chaos. There's people running, there's employees overstressed. Here, it's not. Like, and I've been to all the Targets around my area, and the specific Target is amazing. The place is clean. The employees are happy. They're always happy to see you regardless of who you are. And they're so helpful. So it goes back to like the customer experience. It's like when you walk in, how did they make you feel? Like, they made me feel very welcomed. The place was clean. I'm like the type of person that if I walk into a place and it's like chaotic, I become chaotic. Like, people just pick up on the stress from the environment. So customer service is like, the moment you walk in, how did you feel? How did people treat you? Were people smiling? Was the place clean? So I think that people overlook those things of like, was the person friendly? There's been like, I feel like at that specific Target, I can walk in and say, hey, like, you're out of this item. Can you go check? And any employee would go in and check. It's like amazing to a point that I'm like, I should probably like stop doing this delivery things and just work for Target. But it's just a side thing. But it's the things that get overlooked, like the customer service. How are your employees feeling? Are they treating the customers good? Is the place clean? And just the overall environment.
Well, so I worked at Best Buy 2002 to 2006. Uh-huh. A lot of those big companies have a lot of their mission, vision, values like engraved into them. And now whether or not the store managers take that initiative to make sure to hammer that information home, it sounds like that Target did that, right? I mean, I'll be honest, working for Best Buy for those 4 years was a blessing in disguise for me later in life, because it set me up for a lot of process and procedures and understanding certain operations and understanding inventory. I took a lot of the information that they had there and used it, right? I mean, to this day, I still remember the mission statement word for word, right? We improve people's lives by making technology and entertainment products affordable and easy to use. I don't know why, but they ingrained it into my head, right? It's there. And that's the thing. Like, a company has all these big things. It's just whether or not they want to ingrain that into you. And I mean, it sounds like this target you're going to, they've probably worked hard on getting the values implemented and making sure everybody buys in. They're probably hiring based on values, right? And if somebody doesn't meet their values, they probably let them go because they want to have that team environment. So,
yeah, they're doing really good about it.
Right. And that's a big thing, right?
Yeah. And it's like just in the same city, there's like different targets, and it's this specific target that's like nailing it down.
Yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of people say they quit managers and not jobs. Right. So I know.
Yeah, because you can't give good customer service. Simon Sinek gave an example of, like, you can go to two of the exact same place. He has an example, and I don't mean to like re-quote people, but he has an example of, like, he went to this coffee place and the employee that was there was amazing. He gave him a 5-star service, and then he saw the same employee at a different place at a different job, and it wasn't the same thing. And he said it was because of how the employee felt. He said at the place where he gave a 5-star service, it's because management was giving him a 5-star service. Always asking what they needed, how they felt, did they need anything? Like, the employees' needs were met at the job. At the second place where everybody was stressed and it was really bad customer service, the employees' needs were not met and they were stressed, and they felt like the managers were looking for like that mistake so they can fire them. And it's like, you don't find great employees, you make great employees. And like you said, it's management. It's like, are their needs being met as an employee? Do they feel like they're going to get fired the minute they say something wrong? Or are they going to use that as a learning lesson? Like Dr. Frascella says, like, you turn that mistake into a learning lesson.
Oh yeah, I mean, and Andy Frascella actually, one of his podcasts recently, somebody on the Ask Andy Frascella, they asked him, this employee's been with me for over 10 years. He's one of my top employees, but he made this huge mistake that cost us tons of money. And Andy's like, well, is there more context to that, DJ? Right? He was asking all that, right? And he's like, you know what? At the end of the day, you keep that employee. Like, I don't know how bad this mistake was, but you keep that employee. I mean, especially if that's like the only big mistake they've ever made. And you use that as a learning lesson for all of your employees so that you get better as a team. That way, nobody makes that mistake, right? Because the thing is you're going to go hire somebody new. And this is where a lot of companies don't understand it. You go hire somebody new, and now that new employee is probably going to make that same mistake. So let's say it cost you $200,000, like a $200,000 contract. Well, when you hire that new person that now you have to train, spend time on, getting them involved in your culture, right? Everything takes time, right? And then you have to get them, they're probably going to make the same mistake 2-3 years down the road and cost you the same amount of money. So if you already have someone who's been there that long and they're loyal and they've bought into your culture, I mean, you're better off keeping them. Like, I agree 100%, because I've had where people make mistakes, technicians make mistakes, and people have been like, oh, why are you keeping them around? They caused like a $2,000 damage claim on a vehicle. I'm like, well, yeah, but at the same time, they'll never make that mistake ever again. So I can either hire somebody else that we don't know what we're getting, or we can keep them and they're never going to make that same mistake again, right? Because they're going to learn from it. So yeah, that is very important. I agree 100%. But yeah, I mean, when you look around at the world today, like, what has stood out to you as the biggest change in how customers interact with each other?
Yeah, so for that question, and to go back to what we just said, it's training. So right now, when you call a place or you go into a place, besides using COVID as an excuse, they use we received different training. And it's like a big pet peeve of mine. It's like, if I'm calling to a place, or even if I walk into a store and I get 2 different answers, it's another thing that escalates the situation. And it's like, a lot of employers are not properly training their employees because of the market and employer market, where people feel that they can just go somewhere else that's a better workplace. So employees are basically shopping around for a better workplace. So what ends up happening is that a lot of the workplaces do not invest in training their employees, which translates into you call a place or you walk into a place and you get different answers, which is the worst thing that you can do in customer service. That you talk to a person and you get one answer, and you talk to another person and you get a different answer. So good customer service is having your employees trained well enough that the person that has an issue can literally talk to anybody and they will get the exact same answer, which is something that we try to focus in on our, like where I work at. It's like anybody that calls in and talks to anybody, regardless of what their title is, they should be able to give the same answer to the same problem, because you have to refer it back to like your guidelines. What is our policy? What do we do? So everybody should be trained in, besides core values, like what the policy is. What do you do when this issue happens? And employers are so afraid that their employees are going to leave that they're not investing in them. And it's like, do you rather have an employee that you train and leaves, or potentially leaves later on, or do you want to have an employee that you don't train and you don't invest in and they stay with you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%, because this is what I've seen. So like I worked in an industry for 22 years, 21, 22 years. I don't know, it's quite a long time. Anyways, everybody just wants to hire somebody who worked somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. But every time you hire that person, you're just hiring them based on their experience. You're not hiring them on whether they buy into your company values, whether or not they fit your company values, right? Yep. So that's the big thing. Like when I was hiring people, I wanted that experience, but at the same time, I would ask them certain questions, like, are you coming here to get rich, like instantly? Are you, what are you expecting? And I give realistic expectations. I would tell them, but I mean, I worked at a lot of jobs where we didn't really talk about the values, and now that I have, Safe Drive Solutions, I talk hard about my core values now, and I'm going to make sure that whoever I hire is bought into those values. Because if they're not bought into the values, they're not bought into the culture, right? I mean, I could go and hire somebody who's just a technician and that's it, to do installations. But if they're not willing to, if they're literally just going to do the install and here's your keys and leave, that's just a transaction, right? And I'm not looking to have that. I'm looking for someone who wants to be able to socialize with the client, talk to them, explain to them what they're doing if they have questions, show them how the product works, right? And they need to buy into the values. And so many of these companies are not. They're looking at, well, especially with COVID, everybody's using COVID as the excuse, right? Like, when I was in between jobs, I ended up being one of those people stuck in the COVID bubble, right? And, like, we'd hire you, but we have no way of training you due to COVID, right? And like, there's you can do anything on a video call. You can do anything from 6 feet away, but everybody's using these things as hurdles, right? And excuses as to why they can't train. And really what I think the problem is, there's a much bigger play here. Like, you remember you used to go to the store and you'd be able to, I don't have one here, but like you'd go get a brochure, right? You wanted to know about, I don't know, the washer and dryer or something, or the fridge. And you go and here's the Frigidaire freaking brochure. And these are all the 10 different models. And this one's got a TV in it. And this one does water and ice cubes and whatever, right? And it had all these specs and, met all these standards, and it would have all that. Now it's like that went away. Now it's just, we've thrown it on the internet. And you go into a store and now it's just go to the internet. And I know I'm guilty of this. I was hiring people, and it's like, well, you want to train yourself? Go on the internet. Go watch YouTube videos. Go watch this. Go watch that. Right? Because that's where we've gone to this whole thing where the rep used to come by, and he used to spend time training them on the product, making them understand. And then, a lot of companies would have a sales trainer or a sales manager that would train them on sales. And, like I know when I worked Best Buy, salespeople would have to spend a week shadowing somebody. They weren't allowed to sell anything for a week. They had to shadow what the process was, the procedures. There was all the intranet of how to use the computer system. And I mean, I don't know where they are today, because obviously that's 15 years ago now. But I know the majority of companies don't do that. Like I went and opened up Ontario with 9 stores, and the store wasn't even done being assembled, and they opened the store to the public. And these salespeople weren't trained on the product, because they're all worried about the transaction. It was all about let's get the money, right? And not about let's educate the customer. And that's unfortunately that is kind of where the world, in my opinion, is kind of moved today. Like they're more worried about unfortunately getting the money, making the transaction, than they are about educating the customer, letting them make an educated choice. And it can turn into I get spiffed on this one, so I'm going to sell this such and such TV, but that one I don't get spiffed on, so I'm not going to sell that one. Everybody's getting a XYZ brand, and the other company's not. Right? The other person's not, because I get spiffed on this one. So now it's your personal needs being put forward instead of the customer's needs. But I mean, that's kind of that all comes down to training too, right? So instead of building a culture based on values and educating the customer and letting the customer make their own educated decisions based on some recommendations, we're thinking personally about the transaction and how it's going to benefit us instead of yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said earlier. It's separation season, so it's like either COVID is gonna make you or break you. So it's like, as a business owner or employer or manager, it's like if you're listening to this podcast, it's like you're listening from 2 different points of view. Like me being the person giving the customer service, and people receiving the customer service. It's like what you do with this information now. It's like, okay, you know what the issue is, you know what some of the points are. What do you do now? Like now you need to go and, like, if you don't have money to invest in your employees, that's perfectly fine. You can train them yourself. Like just do a little recorded video and you can have them watch that. So it's like, as the business owner, it's your time to shine. You know that customer service is lacking, so go and give out the best customer service. Like if you're one of those persons that's just doing the email customer service, get a Google Voice number and connect it to your cell phone if you're like a one-man show, and like just have people call you, which is something that I did. It's like, I don't want to give out my cell phone number to everybody, but I also don't have an office, so it's like, just get a Google Voice number, and every call that comes to that number, it's a customer calling you. Just answer the call. Talk to people in person if they're pretty upset, like you were with your stickers, and you're like on the second round of shipping them. Maybe you should give that customer a call and ask them how you can make it better. Personalize the service more, knowing that everybody's going to the chats. Like just listen to your customers, because like Andy said, your angry customers are your best opportunity to shine. When you have a customer that's pretty upset with what's happening, and you go out of your way to help them and to give them the best customer experience, they're going to go and tell people like, hey, I have this issue, and like they solved it and it was amazing, and they did this for me and they fixed it. Or I went to this place and they couldn't help me, but they told me where to go. Like Andy said, sometimes they refer them to their competition, and customers remember that, and they're going to talk about that, especially now that customer service is so bad.
Yeah, that's very true. So what is one thing you do or have done in in your role to provide like a positive experience?
It's like a hard question. Because I can say that I do my job amazingly, but I really don't know at the end of the day. But it's again, like in my current position, it's a preschool center. So there's a drop-off time and a pickup time. And yes, I have all these other duties that I need to do throughout the day. But when it's like that busy drop-off time or that busy pickup time, I make it an effort to make sure that I'm not working on anything else. And literally all I do is just focus on the person in front of me coming in, coming out. So I think it's that personalization of like just greeting every single person that comes in, making them feel like they have my attention because they truly have my attention, and not being like typing something away while somebody's talking to me, and just actually being present, which is something that lacks right now in customer service. And I know people make fun of like airport people, like when you're trying to buy a ticket, it's like you're talking to them and they're just typing and typing and typing. And it's like, what are you typing so much? Like, it's like, be present in the moment and go the extra mile. And if you can't solve their issue, do as much as you can to solve their issue. Like, don't transfer them from one person to another. Like, if you have to, like, put them on hold and be like, you know what, we'll give you a call back because we don't have the answer to this. And it's okay to not have the answer to every single question, but make sure that you follow through.
I actually think that's great, because I'll be honest, I wish I would have learned that a long time ago, early on in retail, because I'd get to the point where, you know, I'm working on something in the store and someone would come up and like, hey, can you give me a hand with something? And I don't know, because I was doing something, I always felt like, man, this guy's inconveniencing me. Like, doesn't he see I'm working? And it was like, instead of me being like, you know, early on in retail, instead of me being like, oh yeah, I'll be right there, you know, and give me 1 second, right? But I always felt like, you know, it was like a hindrance early on, like, oh, like I'm doing something right now, right? So I mean, and
you
I've
never want to make a customer feel like they're a hindrance or that.
Oh yeah, no, like
an issue.
Yeah, no, I've definitely, you know, for quite a few years, you know, like I say early on, right? I make mistakes like every other human on earth, right? So nobody's perfect. But yeah, I mean, for quite a few years, that's kind of how it operated, right? Because just for me, it was just kind of the way I was wired, and not, I mean, for me, it was always urgent to put customers first. But at the same time, you know, when I was doing something else, right? Like if it was like, hey, you're supposed to be on the sales floor doing it, it's like, oh, well, it's not super busy, so I'll start doing something else. And then when I shouldn't have been, I should have just been focusing on sales because that was my task at hand at the point in time. So I think that's great that you're disciplined enough to stay focused on doing that, right? Because that's important. There's a lot of people still out there that they can't focus on one thing, you know. They'll be talking to you like I know I've gone into meetings with people and we're, you know, 2 minutes in and they have to pick up their phone and start looking to see what's going on with Facebook, right? Like they can't focus. They're like, oh, what's going on? They're like, are you even listening to me? Like, you know, like, and you know, like, oh, my watch. Oh yeah, I gotta, like, we're in a meeting. like, you know, but I mean, that is, you know, that instant gratification dopamine hit or whatever that everybody's going on. We're so used to that, and we've grown to that where it's like we need to have it, I don't know, like 500 times a day or something like that, when I don't remember ever having it that many times a day when I was young, that's for sure. Is there a book you've read that has influenced your life?
I'm a bookworm, so that's like a pretty hard question. There's been a lot of books that have influenced. It's I'm like, there's a lot. One of the most recent books that I've read, that kind of relates to the topic, it was Born to Run, which is kind of like off topic but on topic. It's I don't know if you've ever read it, but it's Born to Run. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's I hate running personally. So I signed up for a half marathon a few months ago, and I obviously didn't train for it, and I put it off, and it's like I'm gonna die if I do this half marathon because I don't even know how to run, type of thing. And everybody recommended to get the audiobook and listen to it. They're like, you should just listen to it while you're doing the half marathon. So the day of the marathon, it was canceled due to the weather. It was like lightning and there was like a tornado nearby, type of thing. So they switched it to virtual, where you could just go and do it on your own whenever you wanted. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. I have more time to train. I'm going to do this and that. But then my mindset kicked in, and it's like, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. So that same day, I turned on this audiobook, and I just ran. I had a stress fracture, and I had to get x-rays and everything. But it was such an amazing book because it just got you going. Like it made you be like, you know what, I can do this because I can relate to the author. And it was more of like that personal discipline of being focused in one task, and just going and doing it. A month later, after I got cleared from my stress fracture, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this again. So I went and ran another half marathon on my own, just like on the trail. And I credit that part to the book because it's like your own personal journey. And I don't know how to explain it, but it was a really good book. And it's like, you know, if a book can make you go and run like half a marathon with zero training, that's a pretty good book.
Well, really, at the end of the day, most people just don't take action. They just don't do. Right. So if it made you take action, if it motivated you to do that, that's the number one thing. Because, you know, I come from an industry where we'd sit around and talk about how we need to do this, we need to do that over and over and over again. And nobody took action. Right. And, you know, and some of them are probably even listening to this podcast, but that's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to take action. And stop talking about things and take action. So if this book made you take action, to me, that's important. I mean, the number one book that changed my life was Now Discover Your Strengths. That was like that one there. Basically, I think I've built most of my life around that. And that was Best Buy actually introduced me to that book. And you do this online test. It tells you your 5 top strengths. And then, I felt like I better understood how I was wired and why I think the way I do. And honestly, once I understood it, it was like, oh, I'm gonna embrace that, you know. So you can look at it as, and a lot of people actually would just buy the book and do the whole like little online test. But I mean, I bought it, read the book, understood it, and I started kind of like borderline half teaching it to employees at Best Buy and trying to get them to, you know, and I had pretty much everybody in the department take that test so that I could better understand how they were wired and how they were and what they needed to be motivated. And for me, that was probably the biggest book that I always go back to. That's, you know, changed the way I am, right? But I mean, there's tons of different books that I've read, but I mean, that one definitely stands out the most for me.
I would say overall all-time best book ever that I tell everybody to read is Extreme Ownership by Jocko. I don't know if you read it.
I don't think I have yet, no.
You should read it. So when people ask me for like recommendations for a book, that's my go-to. Born to Run is just like the most recent one that I read, and it was amazing. And I do recommend people to read it, especially if you want to start running or you want to do a marathon. But like overall best book would be Extreme Ownership, because it teaches you that it doesn't matter what happens. It comes down to you, and you have to take ownership of what you did and your actions. And it just ties into everything. I feel like everybody right now needs to read that book, especially now with using COVID as an excuse. It's like, no, it's not COVID, it's you. You need to take ownership.
Oh yeah, I agree. So here's the doozy last question here. If there is one thing you could change in the entire world today, what would it be and why?
Oh man.
Yeah, it's believe me,
It's the big question.
I've had all sorts of discussions with my wife about it, and I said to her, no Facebook. Let's never have Facebook, right? Facebook never existed. And she's like, yeah, I agree. And then I'm like, well, but I said at the same time, 5 out of the 6 people that are booked with podcasts for me, I only met them on Facebook. I would never have met these people. So if I get rid of Facebook, I wouldn't have met all these people that are going to be on the podcast. Never mind, there are a bunch of people that I've met just through Facebook or, connected with them, right? So it's very interesting how you make a decision and then you have to kind of think like, oh, man, but if I got rid of that, it impacts all this, right? So, not to put you on the spot, right?
Yeah. I think overall, like what the world needs is, and it's pretty broad, but it's just unity, in a sense of coming together. Like we've done it before, like everybody references back to like September 11 and the day after September 11. Like I was 11 years old, but there was a sense of unity of like we all belong together. And I think in that sense we have COVID wrong, because we as in everybody's using COVID as an excuse for different things, when in reality we should be using it to unite people. And it's like, there's this thing going on, everything's shutting down. Like, how can we make this better together as a planet? Like taking this situation and learning to come together and use it in the opposite of what we've been using it. So it's like, yeah, there's this thing, customer service sucks, the chain supplies is horrible, but what do we do now? Like, how do we use this experience to come together and make the most of it in a good way rather than in a bad way? Like how do we use this? It's like there's this huge enemy that we need to come together and attack and overcome. Not there's this huge enemy, let's all huddle down and go around different ways. So I think in that sense, that's like something that if I could change. Turning the story backwards, 180 degree, and turning it as there's the enemy, we need to come together and figure this out.
Yeah, so I mean, like there's a lot of people that are working from home right now. And, there's people who just keep telling me they're too busy. And what blows me away is, I was talking to a client about this the other day. A lot of these people used to drive an hour one way to work, an hour one way home, work an 8-hour day. And now they don't have that commute for 1 hour in, 1 hour out. So they have 2 hours free a day, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay. So you gained 2 hours, right? And you're working from home. So why don't you have time to call me? I hear from people way less in the last year than I had prior. So, what I've started to find is that there's a lot of people who, I think a lot of people don't even realize that they're in a depression right now, right? I found out a few of my friends have been depressed for the last year. And, I kind of thought, like, did I do something wrong? Like, what have I done to these people? I didn't feel like I did anything. So I delete them from my phone book. Like, no point in calling them anymore. They won't even return my calls. needless to say, I've started finding out from some of these people that, they've been depressed for at least the last year. A lot of these people like traveling and can't travel. So where can you go? A lot of them like seeing their family. They can't go see their family because, can't fly there, can't do this there, stay 6 feet apart, only have 4 people over or whatever, right? Different rules all the time, right? So, if any of those people who haven't called me in a year end up listening to this call, pick up the phone, give me a shout. The phone number's on the website. You probably still have my phone number in your phone. But, if you need to talk to somebody, we're here. Because really, we can't get stronger or work through this if we don't talk to each other, right? So unity is a very big thing. I definitely agree with you, but I think a lot of people, they don't know they're depressed either, right? They just know that they're not happy with what's going on in the certain the world climate or whatever you want to call it right now, right? So, but
check in on your friends if you haven't heard from them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Check in on your circle. But yeah, no, thanks a lot for coming on today. This is great. And I look forward to having future conversations with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I really look forward to your next episodes. I know you're going to have some pretty good guests.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. For more information or to connect with Ben, check out Benjamin Del Grosso on LinkedIn, at Safe Drive Solutions on Instagram, or www.safedrivesolutions.ca online. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Focus on Customer Experience podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. For more information or to connect with Ben, check out Benjamin Del Grosso on LinkedIn, at Safe Drive Solutions on Instagram, or www.safedrivesolutions.ca online. We'll see you next time.